And it's perfect loading.
Okay.
Okay, we're now live.
Okay, thanks, Oliver. So yeah, thank you again, everyone, for joining this panel session. And before we join in, a huge shout out to our sponsor, which is Carnegie Mellon University's Masters in Product Management program. So yeah, before we begin the panel session, I wanted to do a quick round of introductions for everyone. I know we are waiting on Daniel, but he'll be joining us shortly. Starting off, like I am Debashish Sasmal, I go by Deb. I work as a product manager at UPMC Enterprises, the commercialization and the innovation arm of UPMC Health Systems. Part of my job, besides the classic product management work, is also to vet investment opportunities and also help leaders and our portfolio companies make strategic directions. Moving on to Rupali. Rupali is a product manager at Lucid Motors. I don't know if you have checked out the recent product conference, but their car definitely looks amazing. And she's a Berkeley alum, UC Berkeley alum, and also has an MBA from IIM Calcutta. Has an extensive experience in building technology products. Describes herself as an avid learner, always eager to learning new things. Welcome to the panel, Rupali. Great to have you here.
Hi. Nice to have you. Thank you.
Moving on to Pranita. Pranita is a product manager at the Home Depot. And I know her pretty well because we went to school together at Carnegie Mellon. So she is a dual Carnegie Mellon graduate. So Carnegie Mellon didn't have enough of her the first time, so she had to come back. So prior experience in tech consulting with the focus of building new products for entertainment clients, and right now in e-commerce industry. Because I know her pretty well, I also know a fun fact about her that she's an amazing dancer, classically trained, and has I don't know how many accolades in the CME Bhangra team. Welcome to the panel, Pranita.
Thank you. And I'm really happy to be here with this panel. It's going to be definitely a really interesting discussion today.
Yep. Moving on to Natalia. Natalia is a senior product manager at Accessor Digital. She has dual masters from University of Michigan, an MBA and MS in information. So, and she transitioned from the world of marketing communication into consumer goods and into to the world of product in tech. Knowing her, she is someone who will make the best, opportunity in the given circumstances. And she never say no. She never says no to anything, and she takes every challenge as an opportunity. So, welcome to the panel, Natalia.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here. I don't know if not saying no it's a good thing for a product manager, but I'll share my experience with you guys.
And finally, we have Daniel with us today. So Daniel was my buddy back in my internship days at PayPal. We were in the same team, in the same org. He is a product manager at PayPal, helping their global data platform and developer experiences team grow further. And he has been an edtech entrepreneur in the past, also UC Berkeley alum, is a young dad, aspiring juggler, and amateur pizza maker. Welcome to the team. Welcome to the panel session, Daniel. Glad to have you here.
Thanks, Deb. Excited about this panel. Hi, everybody.
Yeah. So before we move into the panel session, I just wanted to give a brief, note to all the audience members, saying that we brainstormed together and we thought what would be the most important topics for any young product manager in the industry. And we wanted to divide it into three very high-level topics. First would be the recent impact of the pandemic and how do you navigate your career through that. And then a little bit, delve a little bit into the product roles and strategies. And then finally moving on to the product skills or qualities that you want to develop or that we use or that we learned over the years, what are really important for helping us or taking through our PM journey. So with that, the first question I have is, Natalia, you have had a very interesting journey to finally landing a product role at Accessor Digital during the pandemic. So what would you say your biggest challenge has been, and what were the most important lessons learned for you?
Sorry, I think I lost you guys here for a second, but I got the question. Just for the audience, let me give you guys a little bit of context. I was about to graduate earlier this year, all set. I was going to stay in the US and start my full-time job at YouTube as a product marketing manager. But then COVID happened. I changed my plans and ended up coming back to Brazil. It was not planned at all, but I ended up coming back to Brazil, decided to stay. But I said, well, I've been studying for 3 years. I definitely need a job. So I think that the most important thing, like it's obvious, we learned a lot that about that during our masters, our MBAs, but networking is everything. So product management is a super hot career in Brazil, but it's new. So for me, what worked was networking around, talking to people from my previous experience here in Brazil, and I ended up meeting this former director that was my director when I was an intern at P&G, and she had made the transition from big corp to startup, and she was the one that pointed me to this role at Acesso Digital, which this week just announced a Series B funding of over $100 million. So we're growing a lot. It's super exciting. But if I had to summarize, lessons learned: network a lot, show what do you want to be in product management. I think that everyone here has experienced that it's a very broad area, and product management means different things in different companies. So talking to people to understand how you can position yourself or how you want to position yourself versus the challenges that the companies provide is super important. The second challenge was starting remotely, right? And choosing a company without being able to interview in person and meet the team in person, etc. So ask a bunch of questions. Don't be afraid. Like, it's your career that's at stake. So talk to as many people as you want. It's a lot. Sometimes it's emotionally draining, but that's going to make the difference in deciding whether you have the cultural fit or not for that position and that company.
Yep, I think that's really important. Again, congratulations on closing the investment round. And I think networking and hustling is everyday part of any product manager. So that does not go away with what stage you are, whether you're early or later. But then that's something that always helps us to do that. And transitioning to Rupali a little bit here, I know you were in the middle of searching for a full-time opportunity during the pandemic. So did you have to manage your expectations? Did you observe anything very specific, something changed during the pandemic in the hiring process or in the recruitment process?
Yes. So earlier this year, when the pandemic had just hit, I was looking for full-time opportunities in product management. And yes, there were challenges because it was a lot of uncertainty, and even well-established organizations were reconsidering their open positions. They were trying to use their internal resources to fill in those gaps. A lot of companies also had hiring freeze. So yes, a little scary there, but I think a good approach was probably focusing on broadening your search. So it's always helpful to look for product roles in industries that you worked in, because that definitely helps you in your day-to-day activities as a PM. It gives you an idea of where the industry is moving and what's happening in the industry. But I think in times like this, it's good to look at opportunities in other industries that also interest you. Do a little research, be more flexible, and try understanding how different industries are, and then broaden your scope there. So that definitely helped. It is a longer process, but the more you keep working towards it, more mock interviews you give, it definitely helps you reach the goal. So, yeah.
No, absolutely. I think that is a fantastic guide. Even when I was going through the whole process, yes, it always helps you to work on your to apply for jobs which are your strengths, which you have experience with, but also don't be afraid to apply anywhere else where you think you are a right fit and you can do, or you are very much passionate about exploring that space. And that's how I ended up in healthcare. So yeah, so I think that's a great advice. Moving on to Pranita. Home Depot had a significant physical stores and a very, very significant physical presence. So especially as a PM, going in and helping Home Depot, what were the key things that you observed changed, or did something change in the priorities, and how did you adapt it to the situation?
Yeah, so I'll provide a little bit of context. I think so Natalia and Rupali talked about where they were when the pandemic kind of started. I would say. So where I was like, I started my new role in January. And so we had roughly, I would say roughly our Q1 roadmap ended, and we were planning for Q2. And so in planning for Q2, that was really the phase where I had just gotten my grounding. I felt that I could actually have impact to Q2 planning. And so I went into Q2 planning with a lot of like, hey, here's my vision as a product manager. What am I going to do for my, so I work on the recommendations platform. So like, how do I see the recommendations platform paving out? Obviously, at that point when the pandemic hits, right, you have the opportunity to seek something of more visibility and keep going towards your roadmap. If you think for your personal development, that is going to be important. However, we not only need to show empathy at this time, I think, for our customers, but also for our frontline associates. Like, they are in such close contact and daily basis to product, like stock that comes from a lot of different places that could potentially be dangerous, and also customers. Without that kind of testing, even in places as the pandemic hit, safety was absolutely key. And as an essential business, there were a few things that we wanted to make sure were in place. So one, you could imagine inventory. We have all those, like, we have cleaning supplies, we had masks, and all of those were had crazy inventory issues. We wanted to make sure that we were monitoring in real time and providing that information to our customers so they were equipped to make those decisions. And, I think just secondly, like, being able to roll curbside pickup out. We were definitely one of the first companies to roll that out, but that did involve some of our resources being able, for my team, being able to help out with that initiative. And I think as a whole, what we saw is the impact it had on the company was really big. So it's not just about building the right thing, but also really building it right in a way that shows empathy for everyone in your team, I think is really important.
Absolutely. I think during this times, especially from a healthcare standpoint, the empathy and ethical practices were way more important than actually like focusing on revenue or like how much engagement or like cost savings that we can incur. Even though we were incurring costs, I think at this point, what mattered was everybody coming together and then putting all the resources and focus on the right things and doing the right things. Like for us, we saw a huge, like we had to close down many of our facilities to ensure that we're prepared for the worst outbreak, whatever is possible. But at the same time, huge surge on telehealth capabilities. So how do we adapt to it? And a lot of product managers working on doing that. How do you reach out to the most vulnerable population and do that? And so again, with this challenging times, we had a lot of opportunities, and who else had a lot of opportunities was FinTech. So this was like everybody wanted to move into virtual payments, even like PayPal coming in to help with the PPP plan. So that was fantastic. So anything specific, have you observed, Daniel, and how did you work through, especially since you work in the data platform and the developer experience side of it?
That's a key point, Deb, and to Pranita's comment, I think that at least for PayPal, and I think I also talked to some other companies in the space, there has been this sort of like sudden realization that digital payments have become essential services for society and for the economy. So that means two things, actually. Like, one is this sort of like heightened sense of responsibility, as sort of like Pranita was pointing out, right? We have businesses that fully rely on us as their unique source of payment infrastructure and basically sustenance. And that means a high focus on security, privacy, reliability, having like consistent experiences across the board, and really tightening all the bolts there. But on the other side, there's sort of like this internal realization that companies like PayPal were sort of like already established in the market. They sort of like understood their space and were to a certain extent conservative when it came to thinking about themselves in the future. And now, because of this, there are a whole load of initiatives across the board within the company where everybody's thinking more boldly. We sort of like understand the opportunity. We want to sort of like seize the opportunity and understand that now we're becoming this very important layer sort of like the financial infrastructure in the world. And that means that there are a ton of initiatives going internally, sort of like seize that opportunity. And that's a great moment for product managers to come in and bring that fresh perspective and sort of like rethink the role of the company within that ecosystem. So I think those two things, being sort of like very protective of the customer and responsible of the role we now play, but also re-understanding that we are in very well positioned to like take advantage of huge opportunities. That balancing that as a PM has become something really interesting.
Yep, I think one thing that we have realized in this time is that the changes would be everlasting, but we have adapted well, and how we adapt is going to showcase the future of any product or company. And being there, right there, and observing that, I think there's always a need for fresh mindset on how you approach any challenges or any problems that you can incur. A little bit, Daniel, to you, trying to understand the product role that you have at PayPal, because a lot of us do confuse like the different kind of product roles across the industries. And whenever you say, product manager at PayPal, it's like, oh, you work on the payments side, or you work on the front-facing side, or the consumer side, or the merchant side. But you work on the data side. So why don't you just tell us what have you observed the common themes across any PM roles? And how did you manage to find the right fit for you that works well for you?
Again, just to give the folks here in the panel some context, before being a PM at PayPal, I was at school in Berkeley, but before that, I founded an education technology company, and we never went past our seed round. We decided not to go the venture route eventually, and we became profitable. But we never grew beyond being an 8-9 person team. So being the CEO, the product person for an 8 person team and a product that impacts thousands of students, and then becoming sort of like a PM for a $200 billion company that has over 350 million active users, you would think that sort of like the skills and the way you operate in those two environments would be very different. But it turns out that it's very similar. It's very similar, and at the end, as a PM, I say there are like two big things that you have to bring into the table, and one is this idea of being able to solve problems from first principles. Like being able to bring a fresh perspective. Asking why 5 or 7 or 10 times until you understand what the problem fundamentally is. Being able to really frame the problem well. And then sort of like start solving it from scratch, from first principles, as opposed to, using existing mental models or approaches that have already been explored. So I think that skill is, it's applicable to any type of product role across any type of company, any industry. And the other one is I think there are many ways to call this out, but I really like how my current manager puts it. It's you have to win hearts. You have to everybody's sort of like best friend. Like you have to really be able to empathize not only with your customers but with other stakeholders within the organization, with your engineering partners, with other PMs, within your same area, and that's super important because you, to a certain extent, as a PM, you're kind of like the oil that helps the machine or the engine.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I'd say those two things are sort of like for solving from first principles and winning hearts. I think those are two like transversal things that are key. And then as to the second part of your question, which is what made you sort of like choose that role and find the right fit, I'd say you're going to be spending a lot of time on your customer's shoes. So find a problem space, find a role where you would really enjoy being your customer. And in my case, in data platforms, many of our customers are analysts, data scientists, machine learning engineers. And I sort of have an academic background in the space. I really enjoy thinking with data, making decisions, analyzing data. So knowing that I would have to spend most of my days and waking hours just thinking about the perspective of those customers and stakeholders made me sort of like realize that this is where I want to be.
Yep, that's a fantastic perspective that you gave, Daniel, with empathizing with people, not only with your customers, but also getting back to the fundamentals of the root cause of any problem or that you're trying to solve. And yeah, your journey has been exemplary. So I'm a huge fan of what you've done. So yeah, moving on to Natalia. So most of us still get confused. I know there was also a panel today with product marketing and product management, and you have been on the both sides of the table. So though there are overlaps, what are the key differentiators, and also how do you try to differentiate? What are the things, if you can just share with us?
Yeah, again, it changes a lot from company to company. I think that in the 3 tech companies that I've been in any sort of product role, either product management or marketing, it changes considerably. But I think that the way that even was presented on the earlier session, it's a pretty nice way to summarize. So I see product manager as the one responsible for capturing that value in the form of a product. So listening to the market, listening to what users have to say, listening to the business, and compiling that into a product that is shippable. And the PM works hand in hand with the product marketing manager to make sure that this value is expressed to users. So there's this handover there, and the PMM pretty much talks to the market. That doesn't mean at all that this work should be siloed. And right now at my company, my PMM is my best friend. We really work hand in hand because the earlier she's involved to understand what are the problem that we're trying to solve, how are we planning to build it, what type of value we're planning to address. And I can see how is she envisioning bringing that to the market, how is she going to position, what are the go-to-market tools that we have to use. This way we can create a much more cohesive front for the product as a whole. So it does have a lot of overlap. It should work a lot hand in hand. But I think that distinction of one listens to the market to create value and the other ones grab that value and express it back to the market, talking to the market, is a very nice way to sum it up.
Yep. Thanks. Yeah, I think that's a really great perspective on how do we want to see product marketing, PMM, and the PM roles. I have often got confused with that, but later on, as I'm seeing, there's definitely a lot of overlap. But also, I think both of both the positions or both the people have to work together to build a very good product out there in the market. And shifting gears a little bit here and transitioning to you, Pranita, what were the key strategies that helped you identify the role that you want? Maybe your experience in tech consulting came in handy, or maybe your degree course that you did very specifically in product management came in handy. So if you can share something around how did you land up with the role that you have right now, would be really helpful.
Yeah, I'm gonna answer that in a very psychological kind of meta way, just because I think what I think is really important is understanding yourself. Daniel made a few points about this already. Really, I think that Marie Kondo principle of it is really important, because when you think about what customer problems excite you, because your job is not always going to be exciting. So you have to find something that at the end of the day just ties you back to wanting to keep working on these problems, keep addressing new challenges. So really take time to understand what you've worked on so far that has been exciting to you, what spaces that come ahead seem to be interesting. Are there any industries you're interested in getting your feet into? And if that's the case, again, I think Natalia made a really excellent point about network. So then just talk to a bunch of people, whether it's people you already know, people you just found on LinkedIn that you think have an interesting job, work in an interesting space, and just gather as much data so you feel really comfortable going towards a particular industry or company. And you're probably going to interview better as well if you understand where you want to go next, what your personal brand, what kind of story you want your career to say. Think a lot about that and take time to let that ruminate, do a lot of research. And I think those are the strategies that I've been doing even before I got into tech consulting to help me make that decision. And I mean, it's been going great for me so far. So I just keep keep on that same road. And that's the biggest recommendation that I always.
I think as a product manager, we often forget that part of our product is us.
Yeah.
So we stopped applying those principles to us that, hey, why I should do this? And we have to start applying those principles. And we'll eventually come out an answer that works well for us. And that will basically help us structure our strategy of where we want to. And most of the times you might not get most of the things you want. So you always should have a contingency plan of where you fall back. And then you again go up, right? Again, so coming to a different situation, Rupali, where you had to embrace, you observed, I mean, you highlighted that while you were joining the company virtually. And what were the key things that you observed or embraced while you're joining in to fit in? Because that has been a challenge for everyone, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. So it actually is a very different experience to join a company during the pandemic because it's completely virtual. We had a virtual onboarding, and I remember I visited my office just once initially to pick up the welcome kit and the devices, and I hadn't met my manager or even the other team members. So yeah, and especially as a product manager, it's even more important because yours is a cross-functional role. Like Daniel mentioned, you have to interact and you have to win hearts of different team members, people in different hierarchies. So, and when you're new to a company, you try to talk to people to understand what the culture is and what the team dynamics are. So as a PM, it becomes all the more important that you set up these one-on-one discussions. So in a virtual world, you will block calendars and you will try to discuss these things. One thing that I noticed is during the pandemic, at least initially, everybody's calendars are blocked. I think the reason is because in what otherwise you would just walk to someone's desk and have a small conversation, or probably even a lunch table discussion. Now you would have to block someone's calendar to take out time and discuss about that. So that is definitely a difference that I've seen, and a lot more meetings. But I think even the organizations are taking some steps to help their employees stay connected and with what the organization's goals are. I think frequent all-hands meetings on a weekly, bi-weekly basis to keep employees updated about where the organization is progressing and if there are any changes that they're anticipating. So that is definitely helping everyone stay connected.
No, absolutely. I think that's very important because in this virtual realm that we are living in, the chats over coffee and lunch is definitely not there. So everything has turned into a 15 minutes or 30-minute meeting. So having that as a constant, I think initially, at least with my team, really helped us to just, hey, even though we are health systems, so every day our work is exactly facing COVID-19 at the core of it, at the front lines. But having those 15 or 30 minutes just talking about anything else and just connecting on normal things besides the pandemic helped us, just structure and get to know each other. Because for me also, I didn't know my team, but I think, you become familiar as you go and work with them. But I think that really helped. Before we move into the final section of product skills and qualities, a huge shout out to our sponsors again, which is Carnegie Mellon University's Masters of Product Management program. So my first question to you, Pranita. As a recent graduate and an early stage PM, we are still applying a lot of product skills we either learned from school or past experience. I know we dwelled over it a little bit in the past. What specific skills that you would recommend, to yourself, like a few years ago or during the program, which you see or observe right now has been really helpful? And what would you also recommend yourself as you are staged right now?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think I would probably say there are two skills that I'll kind of dive a little bit deeper into that I think are really important. So I've been reading a lot about people talking about product sense and product intuition. So obviously the natural question is, how do you develop that, right? And I kept kind of digging into it when I realized that the core of it is a lot of simple skills that we do as a PM that is really important. Just if anyone has read read some of the latest literature about how to do nothing, Jenny Odell. If you guys have read about just listening, actually listening to folks, I think that is such a major skill, especially during these times where we're more virtual. Listening to customers, listening to the market, listening to your team, and just Natalia made a great point. Just packaging all of that is really the core job of a PM. But I think that's when you see the patterns over a lot of the different features or products you've packaged over time, I think that's where you develop your product sense. So making sure that you're really actively observing, listening how other product managers might be making their decisions. What do their decision-making frameworks look like? There's so much that we can just learn from each other on our teams, within our organization, and also obviously, you know, at a greater level within the PM network too. And then I think always that gives you a good indicator a lot of times to figure out where to go find those answers and validations within data. So just, you know, I don't necessarily have that much of a background in a lot of quantitative analysis or data, but I've realized that like once I've doubled down on my listening, it's really helped me understand how to analyze better. It's helped me understand like where do I look for patterns? Like how can I package these things? If I want to evaluate if a new feature is going to be effective, I actually feel like I have the tools to be able to create metrics. And I think that's really powerful. Like I've seen it be impactful for me, and I really hope to keep working on those skills because by no far am I an expert in that. I think that's part of the growth journey, right? And then I think the second skill is really, once you have all of that really awesome information, influencing without authority. I've also heard that so much being said by, you know, a lot of different, folks in the PM network, but I didn't realize like how little authority I had. There's a lot of situations in the day-to-day when I realized like, wow, like I really cannot, like I actually have no control over some things. I mean, I've been in conversations before where people are like, you've brought a lot of data and that's great. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Okay, all right. So, you know, I think a lot of it is just sticking to your guns. Like make sure once you've built up this case, keep presenting the data to folks because that does speak volumes. Like if one person doesn't believe your data story as much, other people will. And I think using that as a key piece to drive your argument and kind of drive your product sense is really the key at this early career stage.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think like I have a very, very broad story on the listening part because, you know, because we are so much attached to products or digital trends or innovation that we often forget that there's something other or something meta that's missing. So it happened to me pretty recently when I was talking to, like, you know, interviewing a lot of clinical stakeholders and trying to understand. But one thing that we definitely missed in our conversation when we talked to one another person and interviewed is like a lot of it depends on the relationships that they develop with their patients. And if it's not there, it's not. Like this product will not work, no matter how tech savvy or innovative that is. So the part of the goal is now also like, you know, managing the resources and making sure that you have friendly people whom you know in front of the patient. So these are the few things that you like discover or like, you know, when you're listening to them more and then trying to figure out what's the best way to, like, you know, improve your product or evolve your product. And part of it is also like what Daniel mentioned. Again, you have to win hearts. You have to win hearts by data and also by the qualities of convincing and influencing people because we don't have power, especially as early stage product managers. And working in automotive, I know, Rupali, mentioned that we have to try to broaden our horizon, but you definitely broaden your horizon. Working in automotive, that's not a traditional automaker, an electric vehicle automaker that is challenging to disrupt the whole EV market. So how is that different? How are you finding that? What are the principles? Something that helps you connect with the stakeholders, especially when you cannot test the vehicles with customers, right?
Yes, in fact, yes. So when you're building a product that's not in the market yet and it's completely new, it is a different experience because you wouldn't have something to compare it with. And it is very easy to probably make some hypothesis, build your product, and then get to know that it was completely wrong. In this stage, it is even more crucial to reach out to your potential customers, try to understand what is it that they're looking for, and try to understand if there are any pain points, and you can and how you can solve them. It is also important to have your hypothesis and keep getting it validated from time to time. Have open validatory interviews with your potential customers, and also probably do some user research and do some usability testing from time to time. And also there are a possibility that there are similar products in the market which are not targeting the same exact target segment, but a different target segment. It's good to see what people think about them and what reviews are of those products. That definitely helps you. But again, time to time, testing your hypothesis with the potential customers, that is very key to help understand if you're going in the right direction or not.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always, I think, high risk, high reward, but also with the risk where we have to make sure that we are building the right product and evolving and validating at every stage. When you don't have customers, but you have to rely on what you've observed, the industry trends, also reach out to customers for like first-hand research or secondary research. So that's definitely there. Moving on to the other aspect of product management is, as an early product manager, when you're joining in a company, you're always faced that, hey, you're trying to prove your point, you're trying to create your own brand and create a visibility for yourself. So moving on to like Daniel, if you can just highlight, because PayPal is a huge organization, and even the teams that you're working in is huge. So what do you do about yourself? How do you navigate those challenges and also try to get the visibility that you want?
Yeah, that's a good point, and I think something I always like to tell people that are looking for roles in product management is the idea of just geeking out about things you really like and enjoy, and be able to sort of like share that with people across your organization, within your team, across other teams, and participating in initiatives related to that, even though those things might not be directly related to your role or the product you're building. So showing a passion or an interest, an intellectual inclination towards certain topics, and being able to share that and connect with other people across the organization that share those interests, it's a great way to drive kind of like visibility and be able to go beyond your scope. And surprisingly enough, by doing that, you would probably be able to, tie some of those relationships or some of those, conversations to challenges or problems you have within your scope or within your charter or your mandate. So I think that's kind of like the way I like to think about it, and it's also a great way to sort of like enjoy your job. I was speaking with a friend yesterday, and she was saying, we're not working from home, we're living in our jobs right now. She was framing it, right? So we're just spending so much time in the workspace environment, and in our company environment, that being able to take advantage and make something more out of it than just delivering our product. It's a great way to drive that visibility and also to transcend beyond your team and your role.
No, absolutely. I think that's a very great point. Adding on to that, I just think that you have to we might have a very fresh perspective, but also how do we socialize that idea? Because we have literally very less power as early product managers. So what are the small wins do we want to target? Who are the people that we want to influence? And how do we showcase that we are extremely passionate about not only the problem, but also creating value for the organization? I think there's a few things that we always have to keep in mind when we are trying to socialize anything that we're trying to do, right? Natalia, you have experience in working smaller companies as well as big companies. And also you are the first person I came to know that you can have multiple internships during the summer. So, I mean, just highlighting, what your experience has been and what have you observed, especially in navigating things that you have to take. Because at the end of the day, we are trying to manage expectations from multiple stakeholders within the company, outside the company, and then trying to win it at a product level, right?
Yeah. So I think that reflecting on switching from big company to a small company, in a big company, everything is more established, is more structured. From expectations to processes to metrics, everything is more established, and it's much easier to navigate. what I've been finding at this startup that I'm working now is that I was like, oh boy, so I really need to I really need to take a step back and also help define what product means at that company. So instead of projecting all my expectations and everything that I think that product should be in the company, what I've done is take my first month to network internally like crazy. And really through this perspective, as Pranita was mentioning, from active listening. So first, position myself as a person. I want to get to know you as another person, as another human being, and from there, understand what is your day like. What do you think it's working? What isn't? What do you expect this product to be? So I feel that I'm very biased to communications because I came from a marketing communications background. But I think that if you take the time to really listen, and only after listening and digesting everything you listen, coming up with a plan of attack, you can succeed in active communication. Because talking to all the people in my team, for example, we are a team of 13, I got to understand that the key decision maker is not who I thought it was. That the biggest pain point was actually in terms of clarity. So again, communication. Establishing processes not for the sake of processes, but for the sake of really driving that vision and helping people prioritize, because as a startup, like, things are changing all the time and lots of things are coming in different ways. But that's how I've been trying to navigate. And I think, honestly, it's been a very interesting journey. And I think that I'm super lucky that I got to see how a big company, structured company, does product. So I can take some of that and bring to a smaller company.
Yep. I mean, that's absolutely valuable. I think that's always has been a question for anybody who is transitioning to a product manager role, whether I go for a big company, whether there's like a lot of established processes and you're trying to navigate, and whatever improvement that you're coming with, you are trying to navigate it through the proper channel and trying to make sure that you're building the right thing. But you will always receive a lot of mentorship. On the other side, you have a lot of ownership in a small company, but it can be very frightening early stage in your career if you do not have significant experience early on. And that's what we often forget, because you're directly working with the C-level executives and they're waiting for your strategic directions, how you want to drive. So it's a lot of responsibility on your shoulder. But I think both of the experiences are equally challenging in their own terms. And what we want is something that we have to figure out. Eventually, there are pros and cons to every approach, and we have to take different approaches that would work. But one thing that does not change, and I would like to throw it off to the panel, is as we grow from now on, right? We have we are also thinking about what kind of leaders do we want to become, what kind of influence do we want to create, what kind of mark do we want to leave behind, especially as we develop our own brand within the company, outside the company as a product manager, right? So after the panel, whoever wants to take it, anything that you're doing in particular, anything that you observe in particular, anything that you want to do for yourself.
Yeah, I just want to take this opportunity to answer one of the questions, because that's okay. Because I think we've been talking a lot about talking to people, listening, networking, and etc. And one of the first questions here is, how do we network optimally? And when I first started networking, was like, how do I go about this? But I think that, as everything in life, there isn't a correct answer. What works for me is I prefer quality over quantity. So I always start like a very small sample, 3 to 4 people to network with. So in my case, when I was transitioning to a product career here in Brazil, what I first did is, okay, who knows me, knows the type of work that I do, and can help me navigate finding a job here. So that's how I reach out to my former managers, directors, etc. And from then on, they kept pointing me to other people. So I was super targeting, like, hey, who can help me build that case, instead of just, doing cold calls or like cold networking. And from there, it takes, I think it takes a little bit more of time, because you're building smaller steps.
Exactly. Yep.
but I think that that's how I chose to network ultimately, like focus on a small quantity first with a super clear reason on why I'm choosing those people, and then continuing that conversation. And that didn't stop when I got my job. When I got my job and said, oh boy, I need to take 3 steps back and help structure a little bit more the what processes, not only in my team, but in the company. I started looking out for product communities and talking to people, asking for suggestions. So networking never stops, but really be strategic on those 3-4 people that can help you answer that specific question you have in mind at the moment.
I think I completely agree to that. One thing that I have observed is, it takes a lot of effort to build relationships that last. And especially when you're building professional relationship, you have to be like, you can't, you only have so much time to connect. You cannot connect with 100 people and then give everyone equal time. But then if you keep it short and you approach it very strategically and help build really strong relationships over the years, you will always have a strong network to bounce back. So like I have with you guys.
Yeah, so like one thing I'll kind of add to that is, I mean, I think I like to sometimes like approach some of these questions a little tactically also, because I think like Natalia created a great framework. Like I think that is honestly, personally, I completely agree with that. And I've actually been going back and reevaluating my network in that sense too, to see like, hey, like I haven't talked to this person in 6 years. I think I met them on a train once. Like, I don't know if this is, the most like quality connection we've had, but I think take time to think about like, how are you going to connect with these people? Like, what is the basis of your genuine connection? So sometimes it could be, interest outside of your professional environment. Sometimes that kind of tends to link people together, but also like if you have a genuine interest in an industry or a genuine interest in like the type of work they do, especially if it's not similar to yours. So try to think about like a little bit more like concretely, like what it is you want to connect with them over, and go in with that mindset, right? Like, oh, just because like, I think I may happen to know you, or I may have met you a couple times, like try to think about what the, not like necessarily agenda, but like, what do you think the value is for both parties out of the connection? Like, do you think you can exchange information? So yeah, just think about it that way for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you. And we have 3 minutes over our time, so I'll just leave some space to Rupali and Daniel if you have any closing remarks before we close the session off.
I guess I would only want to, tell folks here that feel free to reach out, look for us in LinkedIn if you have any like further questions, or if you'd like to set up a coffee chat, if we can be of any help. I'm always excited to talk to other PMs or aspiring PMs. So feel free to reach out.
Yes, feel free to reach out. Yes, and it was great interacting with all of you. I'm looking forward.
Thank you again, and it was great having you here for this panel discussion. I hope it is helpful for anyone who's trying to make or looking to make a transition into product management career, or is already as a product manager and then trying to find some resemblance in what they are facing in their day-to-day life. And don't hesitate to reach us and connect with us and ask questions. We're always looking to grow our network, and also trying to answer anything or trying to discuss anything that we can learn from different industries, from different people. So before I close off, a huge shout out to our sponsors again, CMU MSPM program. And don't forget to attend the booths, which we have here at the Product Camp this year. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.